All right, it's time for another 2025 game-by-game prediction. Up today is Southern Cal, and yes, I'm going to put the schedule up. We'll go through it game by game. I'll give you a winner and a loser for every single week, but before we even get to that, I've got maybe the easiest prediction in the history of Lustradamus predictions. One of the easiest predictions I've ever done. Are you ready? For the 9th consecutive season, Lincoln Riley will have a trash can defense. But yeah, good morning. That is Uncle Lou here. That's right. It is me, Lustradamus, back with another team prediction for 2025. We've done 5 or 6 of these so far. This series will run through the middle of August. We're going to try to tackle between 40 and 50 different teams, these game-by-game predictions, brief preview of each team, offensively, defensively, coaching staff, things like that at the beginning of these videos. And then we get to the schedule where I go through it game by game, and I'm going to predict a winner and a loser every single week, resulting in a final record for all of these teams. I made the joke at the beginning about a Lincoln Riley defense, but honestly, it's not a joke, and I'm not even really trolling. We're going to talk about Southern Cal this year and their offense and their defense and all that, but you talk about any Lincoln Riley team, it has to start with the defense, and it just hasn't been good. And just truth in advertising here. And if you've been following my channel for a while, you notice I'm just off the Lincoln Riley train when it comes to having a complete team. Anomalies can happen, weird things can happen, 2 or 3 year stretches can happen where maybe you miss on a bunch of defensive recruits on during a time span or something like that. We've been watching this guy be the head coach now for 9 years at 2 of the most tradition-rich programs in all of college football, Oklahoma and now Southern Cal. And for 9 straight years, he's had one of the worst defenses in the Power 5. It's just absolutely mind-boggling to me that he has not figured out how to correct things defensively in a 9-year period. And it's got to be frustrating for the Southern Cal fans. I know it was frustrating for the Oklahoma fans, the 5 or 6 years or whatever it was he spent there. For all the doubt I have in a Lincoln Riley team on the defensive side of the ball, the opposite is true offensively. The guy's an offensive genius. He has recruited, signed, developed, and put out more Heisman caliber QBs over the last decade than any other coach in the country, and it's really not even close. We don't even need to go through the list of names going back to Oklahoma at the quarterback position who have just had unbelievable college careers, some of which have gone on to be great in the NFL as well. I don't doubt anything about Lincoln Riley on the offensive side of the ball, generally speaking. Now, in a given year, when I look at a Lincoln Riley roster, I might have a question mark about a certain position group in terms of, experience or sort of a breakout player at a certain position, maybe running back or something like that. But overall, in terms of the faith that I have in Lincoln Riley offensively, I don't know that there's a coach in college football that I put more faith in offensively than Lincoln Riley. So it's not a, this guy just hates Lincoln Riley thing. When it comes to the defensive side of the ball, again, 9 years is not a snapshot here. I'm not cherry picking, the worst 2 or 3 years of Lincoln Riley's head coaching career. I'm looking at Lincoln Riley's entire head coaching career. And every single year I'm seeing it's not that I'm seeing defenses that aren't elite, defenses that aren't top 10. That's not it. I'm seeing defenses that are absolutely terrible. This is over multiple defensive coordinators at both schools, multiple position coaches, multiple offseason speeches from Lincoln Riley where he promises to, sort of change his approach or attitude or philosophy when it comes to football on the defensive side of the ball. And it's just every year it seems to be basically the exact same result. I don't know how much longer Southern Cal fans are going to sit around pretending that, this is the year he finally gets it figured out on defense. But as for Uncle Lou, again, just to be honest with you, up front, before we even get into the prediction, I'm telling you, I've just got zero faith in a Lincoln Riley team when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. And I've got 9 years worth of evidence on my side. And if you're a Southern Cal fan, all you have is hope and prayer on your side. There's nothing you can point to that has happened on the football field under Lincoln Riley that would make you optimistic about Southern Cal defensively going forward. Nothing. So hope and prayers, I don't know how far they're going to get you, but and if you let's just look at last year, the most recent season, because what he did at Oklahoma has very little relevance to what might happen at Southern Cal defensively in 2025. But what happened at Southern Cal defensively in 2024 might have some relevance to what happens in 2025. So let's just take a look. Opponent yards per play. So on an average play, how many yards is Southern Cal giving up? 5.7. 78th in the country last year defensively. Southern Cal at yards per play. What about opponent points per game? I mean, after all, you can have all the talent, and this goes for both sides of the ball, honestly. You can have the greatest players in the world on offense. If you can't score points, it doesn't matter. You can have the greatest players in the world on defense. If you can't stop the other team from scoring, that don't matter either. So points per game given up for Southern Cal last year. 24.1 points per game, 46th in the country. And this is one of their better defensive stats in terms of where they rank nationally. 46 is actually pretty good for a Lincoln Riley defense, honestly. 24.1 points per game, good for 46th in the country there. Let's continue on. Opponent yards per game. So, how much are you letting the other team sort of move the ball up and down the field? Well, Southern Cal was 65th in the country last year in opponent yards per game, giving up 377. Well, maybe they were really bad against the pass, but really good against the run. So if they can just get the pass figured out, I don't know. Great question. Let's look and see. Opponent passing yards per game for Southern Cal last year, they were 86th in the country. They gave up 235 yards per game through the air, good for 86th in the country. They must have been good against the run, right? Southern Cal fans, they just won't give up. They won't take no for an answer. The point is, Southern Cal and Lincoln Riley in particular, it's not a one-year blip on the radar. It's not, we went heavy in the transfer portal 1 year on defensive line and missed, so we gave up one. It's a 9-year track record. And I'm just done listening to anything Lincoln Riley or any of the other talking heads out there say about how this is the year, Lincoln Riley finally sort of turns the corner defensively. Do I think it's impossible for Lincoln Riley to ever field an elite defense? No. I think if he remains a head coach for an unlimited number of years, it's possible that eventually they field an elite defense. But I'm going to have to see it at least once. Again, 9 years, nothing. Just absolute crap on the defensive side of the ball for 9 years straight. I'm going to have to see it once before I can buy into it in the offseason. If I'm going to be wrong about a Lincoln Riley defense, I'm going to be wrong because they ended up being really good. I'm not going to fall for it again and say, well, he brought this coach in and that coach and changed the strength and conditioning and they changed up their practice routines. And so this year it's all going to come. I'm not doing that anymore. I've been watching this for 9 years under Lincoln Riley. It's the same song and dance every offseason and then the same result in the fall. Terrible defense. So I'm coming at this prediction video from those 2 points of view. It's hard. I almost don't even have to look into anything offensively for a Lincoln Riley team. I trust him implicitly when it comes to offense. And I don't care what anybody tells me or what I read about a Lincoln Riley defense. I'm not going to believe anything positive about it until and unless I see it on Saturdays in the fall. Another thing that you're hearing a lot about Southern Cal this season, or this offseason heading into next year. Because, of course, they went 6-6 last year. That's the other thing. The guy's been there 3 years. He won 10 games his first year, by far his best year at Southern Cal. But in the last 2 years, they're like 14-11 or 15-11. I think it's 15-11 over his last 2 years. Last year, his first year in the Big Ten, 6-6, and he had to beat a terrible UCLA team at the end of the year just to become bowl eligible. And as confident as I am in Lincoln Riley and his offensive ability, They were kind of a mess at the quarterback position last year. They started Miller Moss for the majority of the year. Then, late in the season, the new guy, Maava, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Jaden Maava, is that his name? Took over. He's now the starter for this year. So they were 6-6 last year, right? They then won their bowl game to finish 7-6. And you're hearing a lot of this about when people talk about Southern Cal this offseason, heading into 2025, you're hearing a lot of this. Well, they lost 6 games, but 5 of those losses were by 1 score or less. I hear this every single offseason about some team that was terrible last year. And that's what Southern Cal, listen, if you're a Southern Cal fan and you don't think they were terrible last year at 6-6, I don't know why you're a Southern Cal fan. Has Southern Cal sunk to the point where a 6-6 regular season is considered not terrible? Well, I know Florida, this has happened to Florida. Has it happened to Southern Cal too? Florida was a once proud program that the fans would want their coach fired if they won 8 or 9 games, right? They want to compete for conference championships, playoffs, national titles, whatever, every year. Florida used to be that too. Now they're building statues for a coach that goes 7-5 in his 3rd year down there. Is that what has happened to Southern Cal? Or do Southern Cal fans agree with me that last year was terrible? This wasn't like it was Lincoln Riley's first year. That was his 3rd year. And the product he put on the field is not up to par for what a place like Southern Cal should be producing. It's not. 6-6 is unacceptable in any year for Southern Cal. And if the Southern Cal fans can't agree with that statement, then I'm wrong about where I view Southern Cal in the hierarchy of college football. But you're hearing this argument. Well, yeah, they lost 6 games, but 5 of them were by 1 score or less. Oh, yeah? Well, let's look at the games they won last year, because every year this talking point goes around about some team that was terrible last year. Yeah, they were terrible. They had a bunch of losses, but 4 of their losses were by 5 points or less, or 6 of their losses were by 1 score or less. Oh, so you're telling me you got out coached over and over again? That's what you're telling me? What do you think it means when you lose a bunch of close games? Well, what do you think that means? It means you're getting out coached on a regular basis when it matters most. In the 4th quarter of these games, it's not a bragging point to say that your team lost 5 games by 1 score or less. That is not a bragging point. But here's the other thing. They never mention this. They always leave this out. They stop right there. They go, Southern Cal lost 6 games, but 5 were by 1 score or less, period. And then they want to move on to something else. You know what they don't mention? They don't mention that 1, 2, 3, 4 of their 6 wins were also by 1 score or less. So if the argument that, 5 of our losses were by 1 score or less, if the argument is supposed to be, that means that they're close to winning 10 or 11 games, then can't the opposite also be true? That if 4 or 5 of your wins were by 1 score or less, then you were also close to losing 9 or 10 games? I don't put any faith in we were terrible last year and lost 6 games, but 5 of them are by 1 score or less. I don't care. If you lose by 1 or you lose by 100, you lost. Southern Cal going 6-6, there's not a positive way to spin that. All right, let's talk about Southern Cal offensively. I already talked about the quarterback, Maava. And again, you don't have to know anything about him, and maybe you don't. He's been there a while. I think this is his 4th or 5th year, actually, in college. Got the start at the end of the season late last year. Played particularly well, I thought, in the bowl game. And the wide receivers too, by the way. I like their 2 wide receivers that come back for Lemon, whatever. They got 2 wide receivers that come back from last year that I think would be pretty good. So if that quarterback works out, and again, I give Lincoln Riley benefit of the doubt here. He's done it enough. I've seen Lincoln Riley with elite offenses year in and year out pretty much for the duration of his 9-year career. Again, all the bad things I said about him defensively, I feel just as positively about Lincoln Riley offensively. So you got those 2 returning wide receivers. They've got some young kids. They recruit the wide receiver position pretty well. They use the portal every single year, right? They've got a couple of running backs that they really like. I think offensively, Southern Cal will be okay. If I'm going to question any position group on Southern Cal's offense, I guess it would be their offensive line. not that I think Southern Cal will have a bad offensive line, but the Big Ten is a physical league, physical conference. I know that Lincoln Riley and Southern Cal, when the announcement was made, they were moving to the Big Ten, sort of made a concerted effort to sort of get bigger and sort of beefier along the offensive line. And I think they've done that to a certain degree. I'm not sure about the depth there on the offensive line, though. I think week in and week out, going up against some of the physical defensive lines like they will in the Big Ten could have a toll on that offensive line over the course of the year. But again, that's not to say that I think Southern Cal is going to have some kind of bad offense. I'm a complete believer in Lincoln Riley and his ability on the offensive side of the ball, particularly when it comes to the quarterback, and I like those two receivers. So if the quarterback works out, and history tells me it will, I think Southern Cal will be okay offensively. Defensively, again, they've got good players on all three levels. They've got NFL players on all three levels. They've recruited well on all three levels. They've portaled well on all three levels. You can tell me about the defensive coordinator and how great he was at UCLA or whatever it was. You can tell me about these position coaches that he's brought. I believe you. I believe all of that. What I don't believe is that it's going to amount to something on Saturdays in the fall. I just don't believe that. I think Southern Cal is going to struggle to get off the field defensively. I think they're going to. I think they're going to give up a lot of yards, a lot of points, a lot of passing yards, and a lot of rushing yards. I've just seen it over and over and over and over and over and over again. So, what do the odds say about Southern Cal in 2025 and their chances in the Big Ten? Again, this will be their second year now in the Big Ten. Well, they're actually fifth in terms of odds to win the Big Ten, and you probably can name the four teams that are ahead of them. But Ohio State right now is the favorite to win the Big Ten, followed pretty closely by Penn State and then Oregon. There then is a pretty significant gap in terms of the odds from those top three teams to the fourth place team, Michigan, at plus 850. And then a huge drop all the way down to Southern Cal at plus 3,000. So not really expected to contend or win the Big Ten championship, at least according to the odds. And they're actually in front of teams like Illinois, Indiana, Nebraska, and Iowa, who I think have every bit as good of a chance as competing for the Big Ten championship as Southern Cal does, which is not, again, not much. I think one of those top four teams, probably one of those top three teams, is most likely winning the Big Ten. But that just gives you an idea of where sort of the Vegas odds are on Southern Cal heading into the 2025 season. All right, I'm going to go through the schedule game by game now, and I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single week. All right, start off with a couple of non-con games, Missouri State and Georgia Southern. I think you win both of those games. Missouri State, you should be able to name your own score there. Let everybody on the offense get their feet wet, sort of shake off the rust, whatever it is. This will be, the walk-ons will be playing in the second half type of thing. The Georgia Southern game, I think Southern Cal will also win that one. Not as easy of a game as Missouri State, but the Georgia Southern game, of course, interesting because their head coach is Clay Helton, who used to be the head coach at Southern Cal. So it's sort of a homecoming type situation for Clay Helton. But Southern Cal should win both of those games relatively as easily and start the season 2-0. Same thing on the road at Purdue. I mean, not only were they the worst team in the Big Ten last year, they might have been the worst team in the Power Four, and I don't see them getting a whole lot better in 2025. Southern Cal is 3-0. And then Michigan State. Now, like Purdue, Michigan State was really bad last year. Unlike Purdue, I do see a scenario where Michigan State improves over the next couple of years. I like Jonathan Smith. That's probably a familiar name if you're a Southern Cal fan. He was the coach at Oregon State, and when sort of everything kind of imploded with the Pac-12, he got out of there and took the job at Michigan State when they had to sort of unexpectedly fire Mel Tucker. Now, they were not good last year at all, and it's kind of a mess there that Jonathan Smith inherited, so I think it's going to, it's more than a one-year turnaround deal. Southern Cal will beat Michigan State at home. And they're 4-0. But boy, it gets a lot tougher after that. At Illinois, home against Michigan, at Notre Dame, and at Nebraska. That's a brutal four stretch of games. Now, sort of luck and scheduling here, you've got 2 bye weeks crunched in between those 4 games. So you play at Illinois, then have a bye week, come back home and play Michigan. Then you go on the road to Notre Dame. And then a bye week before traveling on the road again to take on Matt Rule and Nebraska. If you've seen the Wisconsin schedule, it's the most ridiculous Big Ten schedule I've seen. They've got a stretch of games like this where there's no bye weeks in between. They play 4 of these type of games in a row. Just bang, 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 bang. You at least get a couple of bye weeks here to spread this thing out. Illinois nearly made the playoffs last year under Brett Bielema. They're a tough, physical, gritty team. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They remind me a lot of like a Utah in the Big 12. Like talent-wise, they don't stack up to the top 3 or 4 teams in the Big 10 and probably never will, but they're very well coached. They don't beat themselves. They don't make a lot of mistakes, and they find themselves in the game in the fourth quarter with opportunities to win, and they capitalized on enough of those opportunities last year to finish the season 9-3. The regular season, they went on to beat South Carolina in a bowl game and finished 10-3, and they could be like a version of last year's Indiana in 2025, right? They could be that third or fourth team from the Big Ten that makes the college football playoff at 10-2 if things go well for them. And if they want to do that, this is one of those games that they have to win, and I think they do win it. I think Southern Cal takes a loss on the road in Champaign on September 27th, the first loss of the year for Southern Cal. Then they have a bye week to kind of regroup and settle back in before Michigan comes to town, and this is a very interesting game to me, this Michigan game. They're one of the most physical teams in a very physical conference, the Big Ten. And when I look at Lincoln Riley teams, that tends to be what they struggle with week in and week out, is dominant offensive and defensive lines, and that's what Michigan has. They lack some things in other areas. The quarterback position, for example, last year comes to mind. They think they have that fixed with Bryce Underwood. And by the time this game is played in October, we will have seen 4, 5, 6 games, whatever it is, of Bryce Underwood, and we all will know a lot more about him in terms of how good or not good he is in year one there at Michigan. But when you look at Michigan's quarterback play last year, it was so bad. I think they averaged 80 or 90 passing yards a game over the course of the season. It was just really bad. So they don't need Bryce Underwood to come in and throw for 300 yards a game. Right? They're going to have dominant lines of scrimmage, run the ball, and play good defense. If Bryce Underwood can give them 150 through the air and force defenses to also respect his ability to run, which I think they'll have to do, I think Michigan will be an improved team offensively. And it's hard to doubt their defense. I think they come into Southern Cal and beat Southern Cal. I just think Michigan's in a better place right now than Southern Cal is, and I think they get to win. Now, it is possible that if Bryce Underwood is some sort of a bust, or even maybe bust isn't the right word, if Bryce Underwood is showing some of these negative freshman tendencies, turning the ball over a ton, things like that, it's possible Southern Cal wins this game. I think this is a tough game to predict. I think this is I'm predicting Southern Cal to lose. It's not obvious. Like, it's not like, oh, Southern Cal's got no chance in this game. They could win this game at home, 100%. They might even be a small favorite in this game at home over Michigan. Michigan will already have played Oklahoma by this point in the season, and several other teams too. So we'll know a lot about, I think we'll know a lot about Southern Cal too coming out of that Illinois game. This would be a great game here early in the season for the Big Ten, but I'm leaning with Michigan right now. They took a massive step back last year, but still were better than Southern Cal. I mean, they finished 7-5. I think Michigan goes into the Coliseum and gets the win. Back-to-back losses for Southern Cal, and it gets worse after that. You got to travel to Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame's going to be better in 25 than they were in 24. And in 24, they made the national championship game. I know Riley Leonard's gone. I think they're going to be better offensively without Riley Leonard. He did some things great, 3rd and 3. He could get you 4 yards with his legs or whatever. It was kind of it was hard to bring down between the tackles type of thing. But I think he was actually a liability for Notre Dame when it came to throwing the ball. And I like their wide receivers. Now, they didn't put up monster numbers last year, and they didn't really get a chance to shine because of the limitations Riley Leonard had when it came to throwing the ball. I don't think they're going to have those limitations this year. I think Notre Dame's going to sling the ball around a lot more in 2025. I think it's an upgrade at the quarterback position. And because they've got those 2 really good running backs, including Jeremiah Love, a Heisman candidate heading into the season, they don't necessarily need a quarterback that can pick up 3 yards on 3rd and 2. They've got the running backs and the offensive line to be able to do that. So I don't think it's much of a loss for Notre Dame to lose Riley Leonard's running and scrambling ability. I think they can make up for that with the running backs and the improved passing game that I expect to see from Notre Dame in 2025. And they're going to have, unlike Southern Cal and Lincoln Riley, they're going to have a top 15 defense again, maybe better than, it could be top 10 or top 5. They're going to have a really good defense again in 2025. You got to travel and play them there. I don't see Southern Cal winning that game. 3 straight losses for Southern Cal here after starting out 4-0. Then you get another bye week, and it seems like you really, really need it before you travel on the road to play Nebraska. Now, here's the thing. You look at this 4-game stretch, Uh, Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame, and Nebraska. Nebraska's probably the easiest of the four, but it's on the road. You got to travel there. Matt Rule's in year 3, Dylan Raiola year 2 at quarterback. They finally made a bowl game last year for the first time in what seems like forever. And it seems like Nebraska and Southern Cal are kind of fighting over who's on the top of like the second tier teams of the Big Ten, doesn't it? Like you've got a clear top tier in the Big Ten with like Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, maybe Michigan. And then in that next tier, it seems like it's teams like, maybe Illinois, Indiana, depending on the year, I guess, Iowa, Southern Cal, Nebraska. It feels like an important game here for both of these two teams. All right, I'm not sure what happened here as I was recording this video. I didn't realize it until after I was done recording and was sitting down here to edit this video. But for some reason, the camera and the microphone locked up right there at that point. I've got Nebraska winning at home against Southern Cal. Now, a couple of things here. I find it hard to believe Southern Cal is going to lose 4 games in a row. This is an odd scheduling dynamic here in a lot of ways. It's 4 of your toughest games. I would say probably 4 of your 5 toughest games of the year, and they're all in a row. But you get 2 bye weeks. You've got the bye week before the Michigan game and the bye week before the Nebraska game. Now, the Michigan game is at home, so I tried to find a way to give that win to Southern Cal, but I feel like Michigan is more talented right now than Southern Cal and is going to get the job done in a sort of physical game. And then I look at the Nebraska game, which I think is probably the most winnable of that 4-game stretch, but it's on the road. And I feel like Nebraska might be in kind of a must-win situation there to keep some sort of hopes alive for the season. And so even though you're coming off of a bye week, I'm giving the win to Nebraska. But I do find it hard to believe that Southern Cal loses all 4 of those games. So I guess I'm saying all that to say I'm probably wrong here. But I've been wrong before. I mean, it's extremely difficult to do these prediction videos and try to pick which games exactly a team will win or lose, right? Like, in other words, when I look at this schedule, to me, it screams 7-5. It just screams 7-5 to me. And I think that's probably Southern Cal's most likely record at the end of the season is 7-5. But which 5 games? That's a lot harder to figure out. But I do have them losing at Nebraska. I think they'll turn it around without much problem at all at home against Northwestern. And then the last 3 games, I also think are pretty difficult for Southern Cal. And here's the thing. Before you look at Iowa and go, well, we're Southern Cal, we're going to beat Iowa. We're Southern Cal, we're going to beat UCLA. Yeah, normally. But that's kind of my point. You're not at that point now. You're trying to get to that point. There hasn't been very many seasons recently where I would look at Southern Cal and Iowa and go, yes, Southern Cal's winning that. I don't even have to think about it. Luckily, Iowa's got no offense at all. So I feel like Iowa's going to have a hard time taking advantage of what I think Southern Cal's defense will be again, or Southern Cal's weakness will be again, which is their defense. So I think you beat Iowa at home. It's homecoming. I think you'll win the Iowa game. But I don't see you winning on the road at Oregon. Most of the teams that Southern Cal plays, Southern Cal is more talented than them. They're more talented than Iowa. You get to win there. More talented than Northwestern, Michigan State, Purdue. I think it's probably close with Michigan and Notre Dame. Anyway, I don't see Southern Cal going into Eugene late in the year and getting this win. That's the 5th loss. And then UCLA, of course, the crosstown rival, they're just in a bad situation. I know the game was close last year, probably closer than it should have been, which is not a positive sign for Southern Cal in my mind. But I think Southern Cal is a more talented team than UCLA. I don't like UCLA's quarterback situation. They brought in Nico, and we all know what happened there with him at Tennessee. I think Southern Cal wins that crosstown rivalry game at the end of the year and finishes 7-5. Now, Vegas says Southern Cal is winning 7.5 games this year. That's the betting number. For those of you that follow that kind of thing, the expected win total for Southern Cal during the regular season, the 12-game regular season, is 7.5. I look at this schedule, just screams 7-5. Clearly, they could go 8-4. I still find it hard to believe they're going to lose 4 games in a row, even though I've just gone through the schedule and predicted them to lose 4 games in a row. I can definitely see scenarios where Southern Cal individually could lose each of those 4 games that I've got them losing in a row. It's just, are they really going to lose 4 games in a row? I tried to give them a win in one of those 4. I really did. I thought about changing the Iowa game to a loss and giving them a win against Nebraska, but I couldn't. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So just because I don't think they're going to lose 4 games in a row, if that's the conclusion I come to when I go through the schedule, then that's how I have to leave it. I've got Southern Cal at 7-5 in 2025, which would be, I guess, a step in the right direction versus last year where they went 7-6. But again, if I'm a Southern Cal fan, I've seen what I need to see out of Lincoln Riley, and I would be ready to move in a different direction. But I'm not a Southern Cal fan, and that's for them to decide. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. Hit the thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe if you're new. Let me know down below in the comment section what you think I got wrong, and I'll talk to you again soon. Have a good morning.